Yeah, go ahead, sister. Unmute yourself, Sister Vidya. I think.
Here, Master is telling everything about love, like in spirituality, what the love is, and in everyday life, and even angels are delighted to hear it. So he's asking us to cultivate love because it's a powerful torch, and that love means with that using it as a weapon. It is so important that it can end all the malefic forces. Means using love, it's as a desirable weapon, we can do this. And he is also telling us that support us in this work. So we should means through our hearts, we should love more and more so that this world will evolve. That's what everything about love only it is, brother.
Yeah, thank you, sister. Nicely paraphrased.
Thank you.
Anybody like to? Shrikant, brother? Yeah, go ahead.
Chariji Maharaj used to say that without love, there is no spirituality. And in the book, My Master is also My Master, the essence of pure love. So it is very important that, in our sadhana also, there is this element of love. In morning meditation or, throughout the day, universal prayer also is all about spreading out the condition of love. So it is emphasized here, even in interactions during the day-to-day life. So love is very much part of heartfulness.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, very, very rightly said. Actually, is also included in our meditation also. We start our meditation with heart full of love, right? I think that's how we start off even our meditation. Yeah, thanks, brother. Yeah. Anybody? Brother Murthy, go ahead.
Namaste, brother.
Namaste.
Nature being nature, it does not have duality concept. So whenever the one side the love grows, the other side is also equally growing. So that is what happens in the world in the reality. So we do not have to worry about what is happening wrongly or adversely. We should be strengthening our love. That is what we should have in mind when certain circumstances like what we see now in Delhi has happened. So without getting hindered in such visions, we should revert back to the source of nature, which is love, and transcend that. That's when we have a clear understanding of where we are heading. Otherwise, we get diverted.
Thank you, Brother Murthy. Yeah. Brother Anand? Right.
I learned something based on the last sentence where Master is saying support us in this work. And then see to it that thoughts of love arise from your heart. Usually we associate thoughts with mind, right? And it's just thoughts of love will arise from your heart more and more. So I thought that's a learning for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out that, brother. Generally the terminology is, waves of love, we say, right? Typically. Here, I think Master is talking about thoughts of love. We, a different terminology. Thank you very much for bringing that into our notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Brother Vishweshwara.
Good evening, brother.
Good evening.
The one point which was actually reinforcing the earlier statements and the points that have been noticed is that we give so much of emphasis to the universal prayer at 9 o'clock, where we want to expand this effect of love to the universe, all the brothers and sisters in the world, irrespective of whatever their affiliations are. That is number one. And the second thing is, in the night when we try to do the point A meditation, we include that it is a universality of love which has to extend to unite the people from all over the world, universe. So these are the 2 points which indirectly or even directly influence the concept of love spread towards the universality of the humanity. These are the 2 points which just came to my mind, brother. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah. Sister Prachi, no? You want to sort of
Yeah, I would just add one point, brother. So, all the points are almost covered, but just one thing that if we here it is being emphasized, as per my understanding, that when we start feeling that element of love, uh, after our cleaning and all the practice, there is a transformation that takes place, and like this transformation is something which could bring about, it would neutralize the atoms and its trail of nuisance and death. So this is what I understood.
thank you, sister. Yeah. Brother Ravindra? You want to unmute yourself, brother? Ravindra, go ahead.
Yes, I'm audible. Brother, I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you, brother. The love aspect itself is it is a wonder and also a very innocent feeling. As per Babaji Maharaj says, aspirant is a duet between divine and the aspirant. It is somewhere, it is after going very deep in spirituality, touching the reality, and that sense of love may touch us a moment. When tears roll out of, when heart melts, that is manifest of the feeling of love with gratitude. See, there is no, I cannot say a perfect definition about this. It is only a feeling, a language of feeling is love. But this feeling of love is caused by, because of disturbances caused by humans only. Because of selfishness and ego, what is there, seeing outside, hearts are closed because of the so many disturbances man created on this earth. In the first sentence of second para, torturing, killing, massacring savagely, this is what some men do, possess their need for power and domination. Fortunately, you do not have global vision of the world. Global vision of the world. So love is somewhere hidden down the minds of love. This is covered up. Babaji Maharaj used to say, dive deep into your heart and you will find the pearls. That pearl is love. From there, we start catch up the divine sense of touch. Daily we are cutting ourselves from this world and slowly we are moving inside for that sense, for the moment. Daily it's a practice of disconnecting from this world to our divine world. That love carries along with the transmission, along with our intention, along with our interest to touch that real love, source of love. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you. Brother Srinivas
Yeah,
Kishore.
good evening, brother. See, what other point what I saw in this message is Prabhuji is telling that the power of the love is enormous. It can probably neutralize the harmful effects of an atom bomb or something like that. And also he's telling that we are all fortunate in the sense, as Abhyasis are, we have a limited consciousness and we do not have the global vision. Because Babuji and other hierarchy of masters, they have a global vision. They can see good things happening, also bad things also happening. If we are able to see the bad things are happening, probably we would have gone mad or something like that. And he's telling, he's seeking our support. It's only the love which can help to neutralize these ill effects of the other people. So that's why he's seeking support from us, so that we think of love always and we spread the love, so that the love dominates the horror or something like that. We will have a peaceful world like that. This is what I understood, brother.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. I saw one other hand up. Anyway, it's I think it went down because it's tired or
No, actually, yeah, brother.
Kishore.
Yeah, good evening. So because most of the points are covered, so 2 3 things which I found here, like like in the first paragraph and even in second, mainly the love is, it is explained how important and what is the impact of using that as a tool, as a weapon is. And also, as brother was mentioning, like, torturing, killing, and this what we recently saw, right? Not yesterday itself. So such kind of things, and people use that for power and domination. And fortunately, we do not see this at a global level, this kind of things. And the most important thing is like how love can help us to overcome such things. And Babuji is also um, sharing with us, like each one of us can help in this task if there are more pious thought, more people having such lovely intentions and thoughts that will change the frequency of the whole universe, and that can contribute to the global peace.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you very much. So thank you very much. All nice, good thoughts, nice, insightful ones, new ones. I think, that's one advantage of reading a whisper in a group. So you'll probably get different, views, different understanding, it'll be really nice. It was really nice. Thank you very much to all of you. So we'll go further for today's session. Just to, as usual, we'll do a quick recap of what we sort of went through till now. We looked at chakras and knots. Then we in detail as to what knots, what contained knots, etc. Then we looked at dhyana, what is the preliminary level as human beings, when we sort of looked at calmness being the connecting links process, which will help us to take us further. So after that, we basically looked at the heart region in general. We looked at that region was basically working on the opposites. Then there are a couple of classes earlier, we looked at knot 1, where the Abhyasi basically gets the feeling of divinity being all over, starting off in a small way in the first knot, and then sort of flowering fully in the second subknot. And in second subknot also, we saw the tinge of plainness and simplicity sort of emerging in the second knot, and slowly this all this effort with devotion and love helps the seeker to go towards the second knot. Here in the second knot, you would see the maturing of simplicity in a major way on this, so that the seeker can be peaceful, can learn how to be peaceful in the second knot. And also in the second knot, what with his abhyas in a complete way, he would start feeling the tinge of compassion that sort of starts to sort of take root in the second knot. So today what we'll do is we'll look at knot 3 and 4. And knot 3 is essentially knot 3 and 4. Knot 3 is the knot the chakra for love, and knot 4 is the chakra for courage. Okay, so this is I'll go through the introduction from Daji's spiritual anatomy. He starts off this particular knot with a story of a king. Okay, so the story goes on like this. There once was a kingdom where each year the people picked a new king. For one full year, the king would rule, and at the end of the year, he would relocate to an island where he would live out the rest of his life, and the new king would take over. One year, when the new king took over, he asked some questions about the island. Then he ordered the team to start building a palace there. He also ordered a new city to be built around the island palace, all to be completed by the end of the year. When the time came for the king had to make way for his replacement, he left happily to live in the new palace he had built. So I think this is a paragraph where Daji is talking about how to sort of plan ahead for the future. So going forward, there is a great wisdom in not settling for temporary happiness. It is pointless to become a millionaire for a day and become a pauper the next day. I think what Daji is sort of talking about is that you may get peace for as you start getting gaining knowledge as to how we can sort of derive peace within ourselves, even when there is disturbance around. So here, basically, we may get it by chance. We may get that peace by sort of by chance as such. But if you want to keep it as some sort of a permanent sort of thing, we have to fully understand, how to get that peace, set up that the element of peace within us all the time. So I think Daji and Babaji also explain the four process, right, or the four-stage process of merger and identification. So that which will make this particular being within us of how we basically gain peace within us or make peace within us more feasible or in a more repeatable fashion. This wisdom to not settle for temporary happiness takes root when you arrive at the third chakra. The restlessness that started developing at the second chakra comes to the full swing at the third. Your heart is no longer happy with these early visions of peace and acceptance. Now you are restless for the real thing, and the embers of restlessness spark the fire of love, the real essence of life. So again, in this paragraph, I think what Daji I think is trying to say is that in the second, as we saw in the later part of the first chakra, where we had a restlessness sort of grow, and this sort of where along with which you had compassion also grow along with it. So that was basically setting up the foundation for the third chakra or the third knot, the situation of the third knot. So that's how he sets up the situation of the third chakra as such. As you would see in this picture over here, the fire chakra in the 12 o'clock position is essentially water, and then the 3 o'clock position is air. In the 9 o'clock position, and the rotation, as you see, is essentially like in the first chakra, it is in the clockwise direction. So with water, which is essentially, as you would one thing that you would observe is essentially in the 12 o'clock position, you would find that the element is of the following chakra. Okay, so some sort of a correlation which I thought of sort of sharing with some sort of an observation that I thought of sharing with you. And here the color here is white, and the main feelings is basically compassion, poise, love, anger, volatility, and irritability. There are some of the positive as well as some of the not so positive feelings over here. going forward, this is basically the text that is there in the in towards infinity. So existence comprises of all various forms and conditions in which different elements appear to us. Now the next stage comes when the divine luminosity appears in the form of bursting flames or fire. A true devotee associates the heat thereof with that of true love. I may also add that at the time of creation, the origin, where from the currents began to flow out, was cold because it was unalloyed with matter. As they flowed out, they gave out jerks which kept on multiplying. The jerks occurred mostly at the point where from the process of creation had started. It will be more comprehensible if for the sake of understanding we divide it into three parts, where coolness got extended up to the limit where it started generating heat mostly by its own actions. Therefrom it began to assume a differentiated form. It was of course the central part. Again, here Babuji tries to go back to creation and sort of identify this particular element, which is fire, which is essentially was the cause of creation. And and fire being one of the first element to sort of come out from the source, and which is sort of still flowing through us, sort of moving us, in whatever we do in our life for us to live, as well as also sort of learn various things in our life. Now, moving forward in the next paragraph, Babuji sort of expands on this. Now, the same central part came to our lot in the form of Granthi or knot. There we find some circling rings in it. To be plain, I may frankly say the very root element now itself turns into a knot owing to the multiplicity of actions and counteractions. Assume such denseness as to transform into matter. Now we are absorbed in it through our thought, and we are wandering around in it so that we may be able to proceed onwards. When our intense cravings brings us to direct contact, the real condition of the knot, we find it to be related with the element of fire. By securing, merging in it, one acquires command over the element of fire. So a couple of things here that we could remember, that we could sort of see here is like, he sort of names love to be the root element or fire to be the root element. That's one thing. And the other thing is the fire element being also could be defined as an element for transformation. So transformation, because as you probably know, you always need heat to transform, maybe from ice to water and water to steam. That could be one example. And also you would probably need heat to sort of heat up the ore so that you could get precious metal or steel, or so from that, so that we can get the what do you call, the mineral, the whatever product that we want to get from. So this essentially the heat is essentially a transformational element. Is what I think is what Babuji is trying to talk about here in this in this particular paragraph, essentially. So in the following up that up, here in this paragraph, it talks about the condition prevailing in the after we have sort of crossed the sub point. When we cross the sub point, we come to the consciousness of its original state, which serves as a ladder for our further approach towards fuller apprehension. Merging has developed in us. The knowledge of condition of that place is now ours, and we have acquired mastery over it and have become jnani up to that level. This is what jnana really means, and such is the actual condition of the jnani, the knower of divine knowledge. Okay. So again, the one point that we could remember here is the consciousness of the origin, it serves as a ladder for further approach. So fire is basically since it's also a transformational element, it helps us to sort of climb up a stair as such in a way, so that we are able to go towards towards our goal as such. The real knowledge of a state means complete identicality with the state we have merged in. It brings us to full consciousness of the condition, and for this very reason, it is interpreted as a real life which can be experienced only by animate beings. Being thus encouraged, we now begin to aspire impatiently for the further knowledge. Yeah. So this paragraph is essentially trying to expand further, that as we sort of gain identicality, so that we are able to fully absorb the condition that is there in this particular chakra, we start getting encouraged, like as we say, right? All the other elements are also coming into play, like in the 12th element, like 12 o'clock position of this chakra, as we saw, was the element of water, which represents courage. So all these will start contributing, and which will thus help to move out from the third chakra to the fourth. So here, since the characteristic is love, I think Daji in this particular section of the third chakra talks about what love really is and trying to understand what it means. Love is the engine of the world. It is the most beautiful thing we can give or receive. It transcends the boundaries of this earth and stays with us beyond our physical existence. In the Spiritual Anatomy Project, the fire of love is a transformative energy that elevates our being to a higher level, which when we reach the fire chakra, we gain a true perspective of love that is beyond that we previously understood. Yeah, I think this another thing is love being the engine of the world, right? I think you start looking at it from a whole cosmic perspective, where love was the first product that sort of came out of the source, energized all the things around the world. So it's essentially the engine. That's how Raji really beautifully puts it, as the engine of the world, trying to provide it power for it to move. In our daily lives, we often refer to human love, which can be painful and leave scars. However, there is another kind of love that develops in us as we progress, which is divine love. It is a flame of pure feeling that can be poured out with confidence and will never disappoint us. Right? Delighting in this love, we will transform delighting in this love will transform us and those around us. Right? I think this is again what we saw in the very first session, right? Where Lalaji talks about love being the soul of feeling. Right? I think, so I think this is again sort of reiterated here by Daji in a slightly different way, or in a similar way, I would say. Divine love is like a rare and a sublime flower that can cultivate within our hearts, and its scent can carry us away from everything else. It's the key that opens the doors, a luminous vibration that twinkles even the least of ourselves. As we advance forward our spiritual goal, we become imbued with this energy and feel its effects. Yeah, I think this is another very beautiful sort of what do you call imagination, where the scent of love within us will sort of carry us away, and will also, it talks about opening of the doors, right? So typically when we meet people are a little bit suspicious about each other, because of their own personal experiences of the world. But when somebody goes out with love, there are better chances of they opening to us and sort of interacting with us. And that's the advantage of the love that carry with us, which flows through us, which is typically divine in nature. So the next paragraph Daji is talking about, love rejuvenates our for subtle bodies, and its zenith it modifies the vibratory structure of our being. It is a dimension too subtle to be measured or quantified, and it belongs to a realm beyond the material, I hope that scientific research in this area will help us bridge the gap between the material and the subtle, and to do better understand the pivotal role of this rare and subtle energy. Yeah, I think we all know that. I think a lot of movies are made of love and what things can do. So I think but it has also been least understood. Still, physics has not been able to sort of understand this particular energy. Is what basically Daji is talking about, and he wishes that more scientific research is basically done on this. From love springs many qualities. Foremost among them being compassion, empathy, fragrance, the fragrance of a human heart. So these are some of the qualities that come out of love, which is basically the soul of the feeling, and especially love is all feeling. So many of the qualities comes out of it. So in this another section, Daji talks about love. It's compassion and empathy, different phases of love. Compassion begins at the second chakra. When love enters the scene, compassion hits it's a crescendo. To understand compassion, start with its opposite, selfishness or indifference. Selfishness comes from the feeling of me, mine, and nothing else, a self-centered state where personal fulfillment comes at the cost of others. On the other hand, compassionate people have more time to think for themselves because the idea of others is predominant. Selfishness hoards while compassion gives and gives. Despite their opposing effects, both of these behaviors stem from the same source, passion. The energy that comes from enthusiasm and keen interest that come from enthusiasm and keen interest. If passion is misdirected by our desires, it can drag us down and lead us to destructive behaviors. When passion is directed from the heart, it helps us to evolve our consciousness towards our greatest potential for love, connection, and positive transformation. Right? I think this was, so how basically starts off with passion being the sort of core of it, direct only to ourselves, it can become very self-centered. But when it sort of starts moving to things around us, again sort of compassion starts to sort of grow within us, and we sort of act like we conduct ourselves as as one team, as they would say, in this world, whomever we interact with. One of the most striking examples of ultimate compassion is Lord Jesus. Even in his final moments, he prayed for his tormentors, saying, "Father, give them, for they do not know what they are doing." Father, so I'll repeat them, there was a mistake there. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. That is the epitome of compassion, where one can empathize and forgive others without resentment or judgment. Okay. Empathy is a precursor to compassion, where we empathize with others. You feel their joys and sorrows in your heart. Compassion is empathy in action. Feeling someone else's hunger is empathy, and compassion is taking steps to feed that person. While empathy acknowledges the duality between the self and the other, compassion dissolves this separation. Dualities begin to fade away as the second chakra flowers. Then at the third chakra, as the love grows, there is no sense of who is giving or receiving, or who is sacrificing for whom. You do and move on. So if you look at love, compassion, and empathy is probably a degree of comparison, where empathy is basically the positive degree, compassion being the second degree, and being it's something like the good, better, and the best of a particular what you would say a character. If love were to be described as a character or a state being. So some conditions experience that we experience in the third chakra. One is, as you see, is basically the volatility of emotions. We'll go through this I'll go through this here. Most of us carry heavy burden of samskara at this stage. The after effects of anger and irritability settle here. Anger is a tricky one, and even advanced practitioners struggle with it. When we are angry, we often cause hurt, tension, and conflict. And often, the people who we hurt the most are our loved ones. To overcome anger and use it to our benefit, we need to understand anger's true nature and purpose. Anger is the energy we need for improvement. When anger is channeled to disrupt the status quo and improve oneself, it becomes a righteous anger. At the third chakra, we understand the true role of anger and learn to channel it towards self-improvement with patience, practice, and a compassionate heart. A helpful tip for managing anger is to postpone it. Postponing anger is like ripening of an Alfonso mango. The raw green mangoes can cause blisters in the mouth if you eat too early. If you eat too many right away, but allow them to sit for a few days, and one morning the entire home is filled with sweet fragrance, announcing the mangoes are ripe. The next time you feel angry, make a conscious decision. Make a conscious decision to postpone your anger and allow it to transform. Give yourself some emotional space, and you will find that in a short period amount of time, your anger will transform into sweet compassion. So this is something Daji mentions would happen in the third chakra, and which we will have to face, where our emotions are a little bit volatile, because human beings are emotional sort of beings, where love and anger, where especially in a family environment, it does keep going up and down, and maybe that's one of the reasons where I think Babaji also said that being in a grahastha is very important, so that these volatility of emotions are sort of we learn to manage them as such. Okay, the following paragraph: by making a habit of postponing anger, you notice that it becomes increasingly difficult to get angry. Even if a difficult situation, you may find that the strongest emotion you experience is pity rather than anger. So instead of angry, there's some sort of an understanding that sort of wells up within you, which will not lead you to anger, which will help you sort of better understand the situation. So the next sort of a condition is from solidity to suppleness. Sometimes we feel vibrant and engaged while interacting with people, while other times we are uninterested or cold. What causes this shift? It's a lack of fire within us. The fire element gives us the vibrancy, dissolve mental blocks, and keeps our mental being supple. So this is a very interesting thing, right? I think people, we call people who are enthusiastic people, right? Generally with a lot of fire in them, or a lot of energy in them, and which gives them, and which sort of brings up the entire family or the team that they're working with, take them to the next level of what do you call, understanding, next level of energy within the team. So that's one thing which Abhyasis would sort of go through. So at the third chakra, we experience the vibrancy, we cut through obstacles and connect with others openly and compassionately. We no longer view others solely through the lens of their shortcomings, but rather see the beauty in their imperfections and embrace them perfectly. So we basically start looking at more and more win-win situations, and start leveraging like a true team that would perform, right? Where we sort of, each team member would be supplementing the weaknesses of the others and sort of leveraging the strength of the others, so that the entire team sort of does well. So as you progress on your spiritual journey, your focus becomes increasingly fixed on the goal. This intense concentration leaves little room for worrying about the shortcoming of others. Instead, you direct your energy towards working. You direct your energy towards working on your own flaws. Through devotion, your heart transforms into a pure, loving space. There is a song in my native language, Gujarati, that goes on like this. O Lord, please descend once in this earthly abode of my heart. Once you visit me here, you will be so lost in His beauty that you will forget the home you came from. These lines summarize the silent sentiment in your heart when journeying through the fire chakra. Yeah, I think this is another very, very touching statement, touching sort of thing. Happens that, when we start working together, when we have a goal, right? Everything else becomes secondary, and our focus is essentially channelizing all our energies to sort of go meet that goal with whatever energies that we have. We start of moving towards it, and who are with us, even if they have shortcomings, we triply sort of not we would try to sort of ignore them, not bother too much about them, but maybe help them on the way as we go along, like musafirs, but our attention being always on the goal, we will sort of move more towards it quickly. Okay, so I think the third sort of a condition that sort of emerges, the third point is the ascent towards the goal. So again, as we said, earth is the fire is essentially the sort of a transformation element. So it does play a very huge role in every chakra for transformation, because it is a transformation in each chakra also. And here in this third chakra, it is basically we learn to sort of understand how transformation needs to be ideally made. Right. Fire has another unique quality. It burns upwards, even when lighter or matchstick is held upside down. As the fire chakra, your love also ascends like a flame, but towards what does it ascend? Towards that which is higher. Your journey has transformed the wastelands of hatred into green shoots of love. Your heart effuses love and rises towards the source, and it's expressed through the silent acts of compassion. Your heart melts and your love ascends. Yeah, in this paragraph, that is sort of comparing with a real flame, which essentially keeps going up. Many traditions practice fire worship as a symbolic ritual for ascension towards the ultimate love. Through your practice, your heart becomes a holy receptacle that lights up a blazing flame of love. Dwelling in the third chakra, you don't pretend to love; it becomes your nature. Right? I think as one of our brothers, I think mentioned, right? Daji, Chariji sort of wrote his book, My Master. He said essence of pure love. I think that's a sort of a condition when sort of fully sort of matured within us, will sort of enable us to sort of be in that sort of a condition. To end this chapter, I want to share my experience at the third chakra for years. At the third chakra, for years in my journey, I struggled with mastery of the third chakra. I had already had many experience at chakras above the third, but whenever I thought I would leap beyond some emotional turbulence or the other yanked me back. Each time this happened, it took a lot of effort to lift myself up and keep going. Once Babuji appeared in my dream and told me that once I broke free of the third chakra, my progress would zoom like a rocket, so I kept working on it. During the times in 1986, I was traveling with Chariji in India, and we were in the city of Joy, Kolkata. That evening in Kolkata, there was a ghazal session, poetic verses in Hindu set to music, and the artist sang the songs that Chariji liked. It was a pleasure to watch Chariji listen to music. He would close his eyes and tap his fingers. When there was a breeze, you could see his silver hair sway in the wind as each strand would dance into the music. I listened to the music, but that evening I was preoccupied with observing my inner condition. As a singer hit a high note, Chariji waved his hand in tune with the song. At that instant, I felt movement from the third chakra to the fourth. It was like a laser beam, an unmistakable feeling of movement etching as a straight line in my heart. Followed up and looked up and saw Chariji. Our eyes met. My head bowed as my hands discreetly came together in gratitude. He was at a distance. There was at least 100 people in the room at that time. He acknowledged mine, and he responded with the slightest nod. That was it. An affirmation of immense work done in an opportune moment of receptivity. Would it have happened had I not been alert? It would have, but not knowing is the equivalent of not having. Divine knowledge is not taught, it is caught. I think this is one. So I think the thing that sentence that sort of impressed me most of was essentially said, that how alert that we need to be, in the presence of master or during satsang, or during any of our meditation sessions, because anything can happen, and being alert is, I think, is the key. And those sort of fleeting sort of experiences, right, which are given to us as conditions, become very crucial, and which we need to sort of catch those conditions and sort of nurture it and sort of make it grow within us. So I think that's reason why I think Daji has sort of shared this particular experience of how his journey from the third to the fourth sort of happened. So I think this was this is a chart on the self-knowledge reflection. I think what we can do is we can spend a couple of minutes here, and then we can have 3 or 4 questions after this. I'll read it out. Recall a recent time when your heart was moved by the suffering or distress of another person. What does this experience tell you about your capacity for love and compassion? At the end of each day, ask yourself this question: did I pour enough love into my day today? Okay. You can continue your sort of reflection after this session. If you're all okay, what we'll do is we'll take We'll take around 5 questions. Take around 5 questions, and after that we'll move to the next chakra. Go ahead, Ajitesh. No?
Yeah, hi. In the Towards Infinity book, so Babaji writes a couple of things about how the root element or the element came about as knot or granthis. So I'm not like I don't know. I did not understand that quite a bit in the terms of because it's very concisely written, and I'm not understanding as to how is that related to the chakra or how is the chakra formed related to the root element. Over here, the root element is like, is he talking about fire or is he talking about love in that aspect? So I'm a bit confused. So if we can expand that part.
Okay, let me give it a try. So I think that's one reason why Babuji and Daji takes us right through creation. One of the first thing that came was basically a stir, right? From which we all came out, and one of the first things that came out in pure form was essentially the love element. The stir is basically the love, which basically come out and it is still sort of flowing within all of us today, which is essentially called the root element. From the root element, you also had the other elements sort of also develop. The air, then the water, then you had then the other 3 elements, then the earth. All these elements came later on. The last one was basically the earth element that came about. And as you see, like as the elements came down, now one of the first elements to sort of get into a sort of a most sort of what you call crude form was basically the air element. Then followed that with the water element, followed that up with the space with the fire element, then the space element, and finally the earth element. And that's how the chakras got formed, as such. So as you see, that's why you see the first element going in the reverse. You would see the first chakra is basically the earth chakra. Secondly, you have the space chakra, and the third basically the fire chakra in a gross form in the heart region. And as you similarly, you would also see as you go into the mind region, you also would see the same sort of a progression happening up right up to the 13th point, which is essentially finally where you see the space chakra is space, and I think also the fire chakra. Anybody, Raghu brother, you would like to add? I think this is.
Oh, no. I was just in the other call. So I don't know the context in which what you are discussing. But there are two other points I wanted to discuss. That's why I actually turned on the camera. There are 2 points which I wanted to discuss for everyone. But let the question answer session be over. After that, I'll take up those 2 points.
Okay, brother. Thank you. Ajitesh, brother, were you convinced or convenienced, or were you okay with that answer?
No, yeah, I understand that part of how the creation ties to that, but I don't know.
What is the question, Ajitesh?
Yeah, basically, as in the third knot chapter and Towards Infinity, Babaji writes about the root element turning itself into a knot, and he talks about coolness that gets extended up to the limit where it starts generating heat by itself, and which is also linked to the central part. So I'm not able to place it in my head with like with what I know about the creation, what we have read through in the last couple of books. Creation, will of God, stir, jerks, and then the whole thing. And where does this come into play? I
So
got
where does the coolness come into play? Is that what is the question?
coolness and how these root element or the fire element or these five elements turn into a knot. Like I mean, I think it means chakra only, but yeah, how does that happen, or at what point of time that happens?
Okay. Good question. We will come back to that answer. No problem. Because it requires a bit of elaboration. We'll come back to that question. Okay.
Sure.
So good to see that you people are now going through the towards infinity and the spiritual anatomy in great detail. That is exactly what we wanted. That you people should go through it and then pick up the nuances of what is written in the book also, and in the context of the larger picture that you have probably by now formed in your mind regarding how the journey actually progresses. So good to see that.
Yeah.
Nirmal?
I have a similar kind of a doubt. I mean, it's about the fact that how come love is equated to fire? Where is that? What is the connection between fire and love?
Can you expand it a bit, sister? Like, why don't you think they are not? When we go it from that angle and see. Because what's your understanding of love and what is your understanding of fast, which is sort of not coming together.
Yeah, I'm also not able to basically connect the dots here because I'm wondering why love had to pop up at the third point, and why is it we're not talking about it like
Shall I
elsewhere?
answer, sister?
I mean, if it's supposed to be something that is, it permeates everywhere, love permeates everywhere, but then it's connected to fire, the fire element.
Shall we answer that?
Yes, brother.
So I want you to read that last sentence in the first paragraph of the third knot. So I think that probably will explain to you the answer. A true devotee associates the heat thereof with that of true love. So I want you to understand underline the word true devotee and the true love and relation to the heat. Now, what is coming down from the center in essence? What is the center made up of? If at all you want to look at a quality, it is love through and through. So what is coming down from the source is love through and through. At the lowest point, the lowest element in which, or the lowest point where this love manifests in us, is the third point. Now you might wonder, why the third point, not the other points? The answer to that is, he is talking about the heat thereof. Now, if you look at we had spoken about this question in one of the sessions, the difference between material heat versus spiritual heat. You remember that? The heat that comes down from the kshob is spiritual heat. And what is it made up of? It is made up of what is before that. What is before that kshob? It is love only. So the love from the center gets associated with the spiritual heat and manifests wherever the fire element manifests in our system.
Okay.
Because it's coming down from that level. So the heat from the kshob gets associated with the love which is before that and manifests wherever the fire elements manifest in our system, and the lowest point of that manifestation is in the third point. That's why we associate the love with the third point where the fire element is predominant. Now it doesn't mean to say that the love is not there in other elements. Love is there in other elements also, because the fire element is there in other elements also, other points also. But it's just that since the fire element is predominating in the third point, it tends to kind of manifest there. There again, love versus anger. What is anger? Anger is nothing but a cruder form of love. In fact, in psychiatry, I think we spoke about it last time also. Every emotion is nothing but the grosser state of love. The fundamental basis for every emotion is love only.
Okay.
Now, love can be looked at as two things. It can be looked at as an emotion also. It can be looked at as a feeling also. Now, when you look at it as the feeling coming from the center, it's like the most subtlest, and that is what you call it as a divine love. But as it comes down, As is the nature of the consciousness, what happens to the consciousness as we come down from the Kshobh towards the Pind Pradesh? It becomes more grosser. As we go up, it becomes more subtle. The corollary is that as it comes down, it becomes more grosser. So the fire elements now become a bit more grosser, and when the love gets converted into grosser state, it now manifests as anger. Many times, I'll just give you a clue. Most of the times, anger is when we are not allowed to express our love. You get anger. And there is a very strong connection between anger and love. And that's what Daji said today, that you need to allow that anger to gradually manifest or convert itself into a love. Now, in psychiatry, we call this as sublimation. Sublimation is conversion of one state to another state, which is of benefit to our journey. It's a psychological phenomenon. It can occur at the mental level also. It can occur at the spiritual level also. So essentially, you are allowing one emotion or one feeling to get converted into something else, which is more beneficial for our journey. So when we actually handle the anger, which is a grosser state of love, correctly, it gradually becomes more subtle, and that energy that is associated with anger. What is anger? Anger literally is nothing but an outburst of energy. When we are angry, we just want to kind of blast somebody, or we just want to kind of have an outburst. That's what anger. So what is it? Compared to the normal state that we are in, where the energy is actually coming out of the system in a very even way, when we get angry or irritable, the energy comes out in bursts. So it is full of energy only. Now, when you allow that energy to come out in bursts and in a grosser state, we call that as anger. When the same energy is allowed to now mellow down and come out in a more even way, in a smoother way, it gets transformed into love. That's all it is.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
love is always related to the element of fire. And the fire we were talking about is not the gross fire. The fire that we are talking about is the spiritual heat coming from the show, which was the reason for the creation in the first place.
Yeah.
Now you might wonder why the creation at all. The creation is only a mechanism for the souls to go back to the center. That's all it is. If there were no souls which had to go back to the center, then there is no need for creation at all. The very fact that there is creation is a help given by God for us to help to go back to God. That's all it is. And obviously, if he is going to give us a means, he also needs to give us the feeling which is ultimately going to help us relate to him. And the most divine of the feelings that we can use to devote to God or align to God is love, the divine love. And that's what we're actually working with. So when the love becomes divine in nature, it becomes more subtle. It is associated with various other conditions. And the third thing is you love everything in creation. Nothing is creation in creation is excluded from that love. So the love is now allowed to kind of dissipate onto everything that's been created. So that's why we say, if you love all whom he loves. So God loves everything of his creation because it's his creation. So everything in creation is his only. So he loves everything. If we are going to become God-like, we are also going to love everything in creation. That is what is going to happen. That is divine love. A love which has restrictions is more human love. Divine love has no restrictions. It is uniformly kind of allowed to kind of permeate in every direction. And when we go to the center, how does the love permeate from us? It permeates without our knowledge or awareness. In fact, by 11th, 10th, 12th point, you become love personified. That's what we say. 12th point, we become love personified. Then you might then ask me a question. If it is love personified at the 12th point, then what is going to happen to the center? What is the difference between the love state at the 12th point versus the center? What happens is this personification of the love is also now melted away in the center. There is no person or individuality now left. At the 12th point, you're still there. That individuality is still there because the soul and the supreme soul is separate. Now, when you go towards the center, that person, the individuality is now totally lost.
Yeah.
When the individuality is lost, then you cannot say love personified. You can only say love. That's all. There's no person there at all. And the awareness of that also goes away. That is the highest state. In other words, 24 hours, love will be permeating from that person in all directions without their awareness or knowledge, without any effort. That is the state that you will actually be in when you reach the center. So ultimately, what will happen to every one of a spiritual seeker when they reach that center is that they will become love. That's and no qualification, no ifs and buts. Not love as a noun or anything like that. Even the noun or verb or whatever else you might actually use a grammar related things. Everything gets dissolved. It is just love pure through and through. That's it. And that love can be felt by anybody who comes in contact with that particular person. So that is how it is going to be. Okay.
Yeah. Raghunath, just a small suggestion. So since we have to cover all these 2 points, we'll take one more question and sort of then move on. Maybe we'll take one more question only and then move to the next chakra. And all of you can park your questions. We can take that after we finish the next chakra. Vidya sister, you want to go ahead and take
Yes,
sort of.
Sir, thank you. Raghu brother was telling that love permeates from everywhere and from all parts all the time. Is that then pranahuti or transmission, brother?
Okay, if you ask.
Yeah, please.
Please.
Because it was
Okay,
the continuation question, so
okay.
I asked.
So Sister Vidya had a follow-up question, Brother Raghu, where she was asking, as the love permeates from the source through all of us continuously, is there transmission? So that was basically the question, sort of.
Transmission we don't necessarily associate with a particular quality. Okay. So it's something which is beyond quality. So transmission is like the essence of the center. Now, we just now said the center itself is love through and through. In that way, if you want to look at transmission as the essence from the center, you can also think of transmission as love through and through.
Okay.
Now, can you think of a situation where you are going to handle an abhyasi without love? Can you think of it?
Okay.
Is it ever possible to actually allow the work of transmission to unfold without that element of love in place?
No, it's not possible.
So the fundamental basis of how we actually interact with all the abhyasi is love only. Okay. Now, to just relate to these two things, what is transmission?
Yeah.
Transmission, as we have read in the past about the definition of transmission, it is the attentional power of the soul. That is the power definition of transmission.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is love?
Yes.
Love is undivided, sustained, wholesome attention. Now you can connect the dots.
Okay.
Transmission is attentional power of the soul, which is connected to the master.
Okay.
That is one definition of transmission. The second definition of love, in context of attention, is love is sustained, undivided, wholesome attention. Now, what connects both these things, transmission and love? It is the attention.
Attention.
You cannot do any work of an abhyasi without paying attention. In other words, you cannot work on an abhyasi without an element of love. So, in that way, both are related. Transmission is also related and love is also related. But the beauty is that the transmission can be associated with any other condition that you want to transmit, not just love. So, if somebody is actually, you feel that they are not able to express the element of love in them. See, people have different ways of expressing their feelings, no? So, if they have a difficulty in expressing love, transmission is not restricted to transmitting only the condition of love. Transmission is much more broader in the sense that you can actually virtually transmit any condition.
Oh,
So transmission is
okay,
like
brother.
a tool which can be used. Of course, there is an element of love associated with it.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
hope you can correlate these two things because both are related by the background of attention. And generally, the way that things work is they go together.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Rahul, I think there's a lot of more questions that are going to come up basically because of this discussion. I think what we'll do is we'll park all of
Other
them.
thing, no,
I
one
think there'll
minute,
be a lot of
brother.
interesting discussion.
One minute. One minute. See, I was just thinking as we were going through today. See, the first 5 elements is the most critical. Okay. So I was just looking at the time. It's already coming up to 9:23. So I don't think we will have the time to cover the entire fourth chakra and with all the questions. Maybe one of the things that we can do is some of the chakras where there's a lot of things to be discussed, we can actually take up only one chakra in a particular session. And then where, say, as we go higher points, the amount of discussions that probably we'll have will be probably less because even in the towards infinity, some of the chakras, it's only kind of one page. So even if you add the element from the spiritual anatomy, I think we will probably have more space to cover two chakras. So one of the thoughts I had was in the Pinda Pradesh at least, the first 5 points and maybe the seventh point. So these for 5 points plus the seventh point, we can probably take one chakra per session. I think probably that might give us a bit more space to elaborate on many different aspects of the nuances of these chakras. Because as you have already rightly pointed out, what comes in the first 5 chakras is exactly the same thing which similarly which is going to come in the next 5 chakras, but in a more subtle and defined state. So until unless the Abhyasi gets hold of these 5 chakras in a very good manner, because these 5 chakras is what is going to be asked you for in the exams also. You need to be clear in the first 5 chakras. That will set the stage for you to have a better experience and better understanding of what happens in the next 5 chakras. So in that context, if you are okay, brother, we can probably go through the questions and then see where we go from here.
Sure, brother. I think that's a good way to go. I think I got one question, follow-up question on what Sister Vidya asked. So I'm just also put some message. So my question or clarification that I'm trying to seek, brother, is as I said, right? Maybe transmission has only basically not just love. Does it also take all the elements into consideration? All the 5 elements are also there. Is it a sigma of all the 5 elements? Can we
no,
consider it that way, or
no? Transmission is not related to any elements.
Is it a sigma of all the elements also?
I don't know what you mean by sigma. You are talking about a mechanical engineering language. I have no clue what you're talking about. Sigma.
Yeah.
What do you mean
sigma
by
is complete all that put together.
So transmission is not only all the conditions put together, but it's also something more than that. Because it's the essence of the center. Essence of the center itself. So whatever is there in the center is what the transmission contains. It comes directly from the source. So that being the case, the transmission is not at all restricted to any condition. It is beyond all the conditions, although it includes every condition in it. And that's why, just as a clue for all the preceptor candidates, since they're all training for preceptor thing, when you transmit, always align transmission with some suggestion. All transmission always goes in with some suggestion. Never ever you use transmission just like that. It's always aligned with some suggestion. So there is nothing called as only transmission to be given. No. You always align the transmission with the condition or the suggestion that you want to elicit in the abhyas. That's what you do. So transmission can never be without that additional element of the suggestion. It could be a condition, it could be a suggestion, it could be anything. But it's always aligned with that. When it's aligned with that, it is bound to give you results. So one of the dictum in our system is no transmission goes waste. That's the dictum. And if you know how to use the transmission, there are wonderful possibilities that happens. And don't think that transmission remains the same from the first point up to the center. No. As you go higher and higher, transmission becomes more finer, more powerful. Because your system is now able to transmit that pure essence, which is coming from higher and higher points. The systems becomes more capable. So the nature of the transmission changes. Interestingly, 1944 whispers, Lalaji talks about Ganga Jamuna transmission. Okay, what is this Ganga Jamuna transmission is? One transmission coming from Sri Krishna, Lord Sri Krishna. That's one source of transmission. And the second source of transmission is some that's coming from Lalaji Babuji. And then when both these transmission comes together, Lalaji now says that when Krishna was included in the hierarchy of our masters, as of now, when we talk about the hierarchy and we say who is the Adi Guru of our system, although we say from our end that it's Lalaji, actually it's Krishna. In terms of the initiation, it's Krishna who is actually holding the rein of our system. So he is the Adi Guru. Lalaji writes Krishna is now the Adi Guru of our system. So the two transmissions coming together will now have a double benefit. That's what Lalaji writes. And that is called as Ganga Jamuna transmission. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So there are various aspects of transmission that we need to understand and relate to. Of course, that is something that you are going to learn later on, but it's something that you need to keep in mind because transmission is a tool given to us to work as perceptors. Transmission is one of the tools. There are quite a few tools. One of the main tools is transmission. Okay, I'll stop here. Ajitesh, you can go ahead. You want to refine the question or what?
No, I had another question. So in the last line in the slide that was thrown, you need not share it. I remember it. Like he talks about you have once you secure your merging in it, you have the command over the element of fire. And I think this statement is kind of repeated for other elements also. So
Correct.
obviously he's talking again about spiritual fire. So when we command something, we can control that aspect of it. So from the conditions that were talked about, he says that love manifests without us knowing that like we are doing anything. We are not the doers or we are not the givers. It just happens. So from that aspect, we are not controlling that maybe. So are we controlling anger? The opposite, like the command part.
As and when the third chakra gets refined, the need for controlling the anger should gradually go away. Because you become better at handling it anyway. Because of the very nature of the condition at the third point. That is what is going to happen. You would probably not consciously control the anger. In fact, just before this session, I had an Abhyasi with coming exactly from the same point of view. And the Abhyasi reported that he came as a patient. What he reported was, I'll just tell you in one sentence. He said his business was impacted because of one person doing certain things. And he suppressed that anger against that person, about that person, over the last 1 year. And now he's getting thoughts of harming that particular person. And what we were discussing today before this session was how suppressed anger, if it's not allowed to be worked with in the right way, can actually give rise to a lot of negative thoughts and negative feelings towards the people that we hold responsible. So he was very reluctant to open up. He just said, I get negative thoughts. Then if you press a bit further, he said, no, I get negative thoughts. I get bad thoughts. He would not open up at all. So it took literally quite a few bit of digging to just get to the point to understand what exactly is going through. So third point, like Daji has written, the biggest point where we will take some time. And third, the last thing is, third point is when our direction of journey towards the goal becomes stabilized. In other words, it's in the third point that we turn from a materialistic life towards a sustained spiritual life. Without that's why third element point is fire element, and it has the nature of transforming. Now you might wonder, what is it transforming? It is transforming a human being from being a materialistic oriented person to a spiritual oriented person. That is the transformation that the fire element will bring in. So without the fire element being worked on to a large extent, that transformation will not occur. And that's why this transformative quality of the fire is absolutely essential. If you remember, one of the things that we spoke about in 2 or 3 sessions back was the quality of the element, the nature, how it works. That is very, very important. And the fire element's quality is that it transforms. But then you have to wonder, what does it transform? We might think at one level it transforms anger to love. That's one element. But that is not the only thing. It actually transforms a materialistic oriented person to a spiritual oriented person. That is the fundamental element. So every transformation is always related to the fire element. And if you take the way that the chakras, the elements come down, even from the Upanishadic perspective or our own perspective in our system, of the 5 chakras in the Pinda Pradesh, the third chakra is in the center. It literally changes the direction of the flow of the consciousness from this way to that way. In other words, it sustains the inward flow of the consciousness, energy in the consciousness. And that's what it makes you spiritual. This is from our perspective, because it's the third chakra, third element. Even from the Upanishadic element perspective, again the fire element comes in between. First is space, then air, then fire, then water, then earth. And if you look at it from a last perspective, we will talk about it later on. The fire element in its transformed and refined state is what will be with us till we go to the center. The fire element will be there till we go to the center. We have not touched upon it. As we come to the higher points, brother is going to talk about it. It will be there with us till the center. Okay. Now, who would not come back to the next creation or the next life? Suppose somebody goes to the center. If they still retain the fire element, there's a chance that they'll come back. It's the fire element that is actually going to be very, very useful for us to go up to the center. So don't think that the fire element's role will be finished. It will be there with us in a very, very subtle, refined form. We don't call it as a fire element there. We just say that there is a, not in the element like we talk about 5 elements, but in
Essence,
the
brother.
meaning, in a sense that there is something related to fire aspect of our existence that still exists when we go to the center. So it's a very interesting thing where it comes down from. Okay. And now I'm reading Ajitesh, I'm reading from the book now to what you are now talking about. That particular paragraph I'm just reading. I may also add that at the time of creation, the origin where from the currents began to flow out was cold, because it was unalloyed with matter. That's why when we say spiritual heat, we say that it is cool. The difference between material heat and spiritual heat is that spiritual heat by nature is cool. Although we use the word heat, it has no heat in it per se. It is cool in nature. Okay. Now, as they flowed out, they gave out jerks which went on multiplying. With this we have read. As the creation came down from the shore, you started getting jerks, and they went on multiplying. Now, the jerks occurred mostly at the point where from the process of creation had started. Now, if you go back to the section when we read about the eggs and the different points where, if you go back to the example of magnetic field, you remember that example? So you keep a magnet, you keep the iron filings and just tap it. When you tap it, you will see that the magnetic field is aligned in certain directions at certain places. So it's not flowing in all directions, right? In certain directions, in certain places, it's flowing. Exactly the same thing occurs at the time of creation. At the time of creation, although we say that the creation proceeded from the Kshor, it is not uniformly across the Kshor. In the Kshor, in different places, the energy is flowing, and that is what he's now talking about. So The jerks occurred mostly at the point where from the process of creation started. So there are some parts of the globe which is inactive, there are some parts which is active. That is where we say that the creation started. Now, it will be more comprehensibly for the sake of understanding, we divide into three parts. The same thing, whatever is now described earlier on, is now dividing into three parts. What are the three parts? When the coolness got extended up to the limit where it started generating heat, mostly by its own actions, therefrom it began to assume the differentiated form. In other words, initially it started off with coolness, but as and when the action went on multiplying, it started manifesting the element of heat in it, in the way that we understand materially, although it's in the most super refined state. So the coolness was there, but it associates now because of the action multiplying, there is an element of the heat that is coming in. Because of the element of the heat coming in, there is a differentiated form. If that heat element did not come, there would be no differentiation. In the coolness part of the creation, there is no differentiation as yet. But as and when the heat starts coming, because of the vibrations or the energy or the jerks that it's getting, you start getting some kind of differentiation. It was, of course, the central part. Now, the same central part came to our lot in the form of Granthi or the knot. In other words, the Granthi, you remember, everything that happens in the macrocosm, Babuji relates to the microcosm. So now that central part, what is that central part? Where the coolness got converted into heat. That part. Coolness getting converted into the heat. That came down into our system in the microcosm as the knots or the granthis. In other words, it go back to this. As and when we work on any granthi or not, as it opens up and unflowers, flowers fully, gradually the heat in the chakra is now lost. We tend to go towards coolness. And one of the ways that people actually talk about is that this person has now become very, very calm compared to the past. The calmness is something that people talk about at a very grosser level. But what essentially they are feeling inside is the coolness of that particular chakra. That is what has happened. Now, there we find some circling rings in it. To be more plain, I may frankly say that the very root element now by itself turned into a knot. Now, this is a very important point that he is making. What is the root element? The root element is the center. In every point, in every granthi, there is the root element present, which is the center. Which is why, if you look at it, you can work on any point and take the abhyasi to the centermost point in that particular granthi. Where do you go? You go to the center. So that's why spiritual journey can be looked at two ways. You can either go on from the point perspective, you proceed from first point up to the 13th point and to the center. That's one way of looking at it. The second way of looking at it is you work on first point only. You go to different depths at different in the first point itself. At different depths, all the conditions which are there in all the chakras will manifest in the first point only. When you go to the center of the first point, you go to the center only. So that is what he is talking about. So here he says, I may frankly say, he is kind of openly saying the very root element now by itself turned into a knot, owing to the multiplicity of the actions and the counteractions, assumed such denseness as it transformed into matter. Okay, so initially the root element is at the center of every chakra. It is now, I said about first point more specifically than other points. Why is that? It's the first point which is very, very vast and very, very complicated compared to all other chakras. In fact, Lalaji writes in the 44 Whispers, if you just take the first point, not only it is there in the first point here, I'll just show it here. Not only it is there in the first point here, the entire heart region is full of the first point only. The second point is a very small part. The third point is also a very small part, and the fourth point is also a very small part. So, if you want to complete the journey in the Pinda Pradesh, most of the time we actually spend in the first point only. Because Lalaji says it's how crucial this point is important in terms of the first point. To the extent that we can actually give all kinds of nuances of experience to an Abhyasi in the first point, to that extent, they become better prepared to grasp all the subtle conditions at the higher points. So you can take the entire journey can be completed just by working on the first point. That's also one of the reasons that even though many times a preceptor might not know about the points, the preceptor might not know anything about the conditions at different points, still, if they can continue to work on the first point, the Abhyasa will progress. The simple reason is because of this. Okay. Anyway, what then happened? The center root element is there at the center of every chakra. Around that, you have the energy concentrated. Around that, you have the matter in the form of samskaras. We have deposited over that. That's what we are doing. Hope it is clear. Okay. So, if you work on any point and take you to the center, you can actually touch the root element. Of all the chakras, what is the best point to work on the root element is the first chakra. So that's why Daji says, even if you don't know anything, go on working on the first point, the Abhyasa will benefit. Because the first point is like the root. If you just pour transmission into the root, every other point, every other chakra in the system will get the benefit of it. The heart itself will distribute the transmission that you give to the other chakras as and how it is necessary. Like when we water a plant, the roots itself will decide how much of water should go to the stem, how much of water should go to the branches, how much to the leaves, how much to the flower or the buds, and how much to the flower itself or the fruit. We don't decide it. All that we do is we water the root. Everything else is taken care by the plant's root itself. Likewise, we water the first point with transmission. Everything else in terms of which point should get more amount of transmission, how much and what is the work supposed to happen, everything is taken care by our heart only. So that's the beauty of the system.
It's almost like a foolproof process, brother.
Exactly. If you understand everything in meditation, it's so methodical. There's nothing like abruptly something happening. Nothing will happen abruptly in our system. Everything is very, very methodically built, session by session. And now we are coming to the point of heart. If there are no other questions, I want to talk about 2 points I wanted to tell you. Okay. First one, Madhuri sister, you can finish the question. Then we'll go to the last 2 points.
Yeah. Yeah. In the spiritual anatomy, the last line, after his experience that Chariji takes out his anger in that music concert, he says, an affirmation of the immense work done in an opportune moment of receptivity. Would it have happened if I had not been alert? He said it could have, but not knowing is equivalent to not having. So, not knowing most of our conditions, we don't know. But yet we are progressing. That also we could see in our qualities. So, not knowing is not having, I would like to.
That's why the importance of awareness. That is what I am going to discuss now. That's what we are coming to. Okay. So the question that you asked is in tune with what we are going to now talk about. Okay. So we'll cover that point. Piyush?
Brother, that you were talking about the center present in each point, and so you go and so how is it related, or I mean, how is it different from that Avdut Gati concept we studied, that you are in one and
We'll
you
cover
are,
that also.
you know?
We'll cover
Oh,
that also. What we are going to discuss.
okay,
Okay.
okay.
We had the session with Daji last week. And what is it that we learned in the session is one simple learning. So I just wanted to share that with you. Master's currency of interaction with the Abhyasi is condition. That's why Daji writes in the Heartfulness Way, the teaching is the least of the ways in which Master actually works. How does Master work out with Abhyasi? He works through conditions. Okay? Now, if you go back to the example that you just now read, in terms of what happens to Daji, in terms of the journey from the third point to the next point, it happened at an opportune moment when the heart was receptive. It was an appropriate moment when the heart was receptive, then this particular moment occurred to the next point. Okay. Now, it was not that Daji had not experienced the conditions of the higher points before. Daji had, in fact, he only writes in the same book that I've had experiences with the higher points much earlier. But somehow we were not able to master the third point. Now, you might ask, how did he get the experience of the higher points earlier? That is the magic of transmission. Transmission can give you higher conditions even though you might not be ready as yet. Now, why is it necessary? Transmission gives you the higher conditions to give the heart a taste of the higher possibilities. When the heart is given a taste of the higher possibilities, it now develops craving to go to that particular state. And that's again one of the beauty of the transmission, that you can actually experience higher states much before you actually arrive at that particular point. And that creates craving for the heart to yearn to go towards that state. Okay. Now, coming back to, and the last sentence is, divine knowledge is not taught, it is caught. Now, the question comes, how to catch the divine knowledge? That's the question, right? First and foremost, we have to teach the Abhyasi. I told you last time around 4 questions that we have to teach every Abhyasi from day 1. None of us actually are taught from day 1 or from early part of our journey what is a condition. We don't talk about it at all. What is a condition? How to acquire and recognize a condition, how to develop a condition, and how to utilize the condition for our spiritual journey. Now, if we can make this as the fundamental basis of our training the Abhyasi from day 1, it becomes very, very easy for the Abhyasi to relate to this as a journey. Now, what exactly happens? How do we actually grasp the condition? How does it work? Now, when we sit for meditation, we are told to bring our attention on to where? To the heart. In other words, during the meditation, you bring the attention to the heart. Now, where does the condition manifest?
Heart only.
Heart,
only.
brother.
Heart only, correct? Now, look at the magic what happened. Why heart is the center for, why it is called as heartfulness meditation, not nothing else. When you allow the mind to sit next to the heart, whatever is the condition which is now developing in the heart is now grasped or absorbed by the mind. Because you have allowed the mind to stay next to the heart during the meditation. And what is the quality of the mind? The mind absorbs the quality of the object that it sits next to. That is the nature of the mind anyway. So you are utilizing that. So you allow the mind to absorb that condition. Now, 2 benefits out of it. Now, the moment you say that's all, what happens to the mind? Does the mind still stay near the heart? When you say, please tell me what happened in the meditation. What is your observation? What is your feeling? This is the question that we ask after the meditation. Now, who answers the question?
Mind.
Is it the heart or the mind?
Mind.
It is the mind which is the answering the question. It is the mind which actually verbalizes the experience and actually tells what has been the experience. The heart cannot speak to you directly. It is the mind which actually speaks of the condition. Now, in order to know the condition, 2 things should be necessary. You need to be alert to the condition that emerges in the heart and be aware of it. And secondly, we have to develop vocabulary at the level of the mind to be able to express the condition. If you do not develop the vocabulary to express the condition, then also we are going to miss the condition. And majority of the people do struggle to develop this vocabulary. All that they say is, I felt nice after the meditation. I felt relaxed after the meditation. I felt calm after the meditation. I felt peaceful. Now, these are the 3-4 words that people use, beyond which they cannot go. That is where, now you come back to this. I want to take you back to one other point that we have read, and one of you had asked this question at that time. The Babuji writes in the complete works, heart is the place where the link between the animate and the inanimate is most clearly felt. Somebody had asked this question at that time when we were going through that session. And we had at that time spoken about animate means something which is moving, inanimate means something which is not moving. That's what we had actually talked about. Now, if you go into the further nuance of this particular sentence, a very accurate description or translation is actually given in Kannada. In English, the word used is animate versus inanimate. But in Kannada, the word that is used is jada versus chetana. That is a very, very accurate description. Animate and inanimate does not give you the right perspective. Jada means something inert. Chetana means something which is conscious. Okay, so where is the link felt between the inert and the conscious thing? It is in the heart. That is why we meditate on the heart. Now look at it. What is supposed to happen during the session of meditation that you take from a preceptor? Your mind should be changed. In other words, the heart is now, when we are engrossed in the worldly things, the heart is flowing towards the materiality or the inert things. When we sit for meditation and take a sitting, our heart or the direction of the heart's movement is now changed from materiality or inert things towards consciousness. That is what we do during the session of meditation. Now, there are 4 ways in which you can turn the mind's attention or the heart's direction towards consciousness, because heart has both the components. Now look at it. Heart has, when you interact with the outside substance, we are just talking about, we are not all talking about through the computer or the phone. Does the computer or the phone have life in it? In the way that we experience life?
No.
No. Sure. None of the things that we actually interact with in our life has any life in it. The car doesn't have a life. The table doesn't have a life. None of the objects. Right? But we seem to give some life to it by our own understanding. In other words, when I say there is no life, the consciousness is not there. The consciousness is dormant. That is what Babuji means when he says animate versus inanimate. Inanimate is a state where the consciousness is dormant. Animate is a state where the consciousness is actually trying to express itself. Now look at the entire creation. Of all the things in the creation, which organism has the best expression of consciousness?
Human beings.
Human beings. That is why, in the context of, you remember the tuning fork example that it given in cosmology, one arm is divine, other one is human. The consciousness is expressed so vividly in humanity, in humans, that it's not even given to devatas, gods. It's only the humans who are given the ability to go from one level of consciousness to the highest, which is beyond the consciousness itself. To that extent, we can go. Now, look at it. What is it that we actually do in a day-to-day life, and why is that our spiritual progress slows down? You take the sitting, and you suppose you had a nice condition at the end of the sitting. You say that I felt very peaceful and calm. You had a nice condition. Sitting is over, we go back home. What do we do then, normally?
We get into things.
We get into the action.
Action.
We continue the action. Now, when we get into the action, where are we now dwelling in? Are we dwelling in consciousness or are we dwelling in matter?
Matter mostly.
99.9% matter. Now, look at this folly that we do. We are engaged 99.9% in matter. Now, when I say matter, every object, non-living object that you interact is matter only. Even when you interact with other human beings, what is the level that which you actually interact with them? Either at the body level or the mind level or the samskara level. Do you interact with other human beings at the consciousness level? No, we are not even aware of it. We interact with everybody else either at the body level, mind level, or at the conscious, at the samskara level. What are these three? They are also matter only. Now you tell me, you had a sitting, your direction is now changed to consciousness, but the moment you go out, till you come to the next sitting, you are aligned and you are continuously interacting with the matter only. How can you make spiritual progress? Now the question comes up. How do we actually rectify this situation? How do we work with it then? That is why we say after the sitting is over, you go back and pay attention to the heart on and off regularly. Now, when we say pay attention to the heart, what are you doing? You are actually going back to the condition that you got at the end of the meditation. That is what you are doing. In other words, we talk about AEIOU. How do we actually do the AEIOU? One thing which is not at all talked about in the context of AEIOU is the best way to do the AEIOU is to allow the mind to settle on the condition in the heart. Now, when you allow the mind to settle on the condition in the heart continuously, and you start interacting with the world from that particular level, from where you are actually at the condition, then you are said to be in constant remembrance. But constant remembrance has one other quality to it, one other aspect to it. What is that? See, are we doing meditation to get to know about consciousness? Is that our goal of meditation? No. We should be very clear about the goal. Are we doing meditation only to catch hold of the condition and get stuck with the condition?
No.
So conditions are also not our goal. Consciousness is also not our goal. Consciousness and conditions are only a way to reach towards the goal. Right? So constant remembrance is that where you align your mind towards the goal all the time. And you look at the journey in the consciousness in the context of conditions as a way to go towards the journey, towards the goal. Now, somebody asked about Avadhuta state. What is an Avadhuta state? Avadhuta state is that in which the person becomes engrossed in the condition, they settle down in the consciousness so much that they forget the goal. As long as you don't forget the goal, there is no risk of getting Avadhuta state. But if you start forgetting the goal and you start getting immersed and absorb the condition to an extent which is beyond what is necessary for your journey, you are going to develop a state of Avadhuta. So that is the importance of the third maxim now. What is the third maxim? Fix your goal. And be always looking at the goal. All the time have the goal right in front of your eyes. That's the third maxim. Now, if you experience the condition in the context of the third maxim, of the fixing of the goal, having the goal in mind, you are not likely to get stuck at any condition. Because you know in the heart that every condition is a passing thing. Why are you going to get worried about it? You are going to absorb certain amount that is necessary for your journey and you are now ready to move on to the next one. Now, every level of consciousness is associated with a different condition. So why do we need to take sitting then? The entire journey is by developing different conditions. Where are the conditions? At every level, different levels of consciousness, different conditions are embedded by nature. We are not embedding it. It's already embedded by nature. All that we do is we refine our consciousness. How do we refine our consciousness? Four things. Our own practice, individual sittings by the preceptor. Third is satsang. Fourth one is bandhara. Now you will understand that if your journey is through different layers of consciousness, by actually assimilating different conditions at different levels of consciousness, you need to have a good mechanism where you can move from one level of consciousness to the next level. And there, all these four things becomes important. Your abhyas, regularity of abhyas, the individual sittings. In fact, of the four, most crucial is the individual sittings. If you do not take the individual sittings, you are going to be stuck. Now, we have to tell all the abhyasis about all these things. Now, let us look at it. In the Happy Hearts, there was a session, and then I just made one comment. We said, in order to catch the condition, you have to decondition yourself. Decondition to get the condition is the sentence. Now you might wonder, what is this decondition and what is this condition? You can say decondition with a small c and condition with a capital C. Now what is deconditioning? You should get rid of all the samskaras. That is the conditioning that you have got. That's the small c. And then we have to go towards the conditioning, which is the embedded in the consciousness. That's the big C. Without deconditioning, you are not going to get any condition. How to decondition? That is where the individual sitting helps. More than anything else, it is the individual sitting that actually helps in deconditioning. And that is where the importance of the cleaning process comes in. If you are regular in cleaning sessions, that helps you in your deconditioning process. Okay. Now, what are we supposed to do after the meditation is sitting is over? You go and settle back into the condition that you have been given at the end of the meditation session. And all that you have to do is to learn to be settled there and continue to pay an attention on that condition all the time, irrespective of what other activity that you are doing. And this is exactly what Babuji did during his session. There is one paragraph in the Red Book. I want to read out that particular paragraph. Maybe it might come here. I don't think he's elaborated much here. But there is one paragraph that Babuji writes that he was doing when he was an Abhyasi. And he says, I was doing 3 things simultaneously. And I wanted to read out what are these 3 things. Let me see whether I have the Red Book here. Looks like I have kept the Red Book away. I've put it in the locker. I'll get it next time around. 3 things he says. All the time I was busy doing these 3 things. I can remember 2 things. One was he was actually digesting the condition that he had gone. That was one thing. Secondly, he was eagerly anticipating the next condition that's going to open up. And there is one other thing that he was doing simultaneously. So these 3 things. I don't remember the third one. But these 2 things relating to the condition. The condition that he was in, he was digesting it. And then the next condition that is due to arrive, he was anticipating it. And that's why he could progress so fast. Okay. Now, what are we supposed to do after the meditation session is over? We should learn to work with the condition and dwell on the condition or settle on the condition. Now, when you settle on the condition, what is supposed to happen? The mind is going to absorb the essence of the condition. Now, when the mind absorbs the essence of the condition, then the mind is going to distribute the condition to the pranamaya kosha and the annamaya kosha. It's the mind which is going to distribute. Heart is also going to play its part in the distribution. Mind is also going to play a part in the distribution. When the mind gets absorbed of the condition, now we interact with the world with the influence of the condition that we have got in the meditation. So many times we have this. All of us would have experienced. You feel so peaceful that when you actually go out into the world and you are interacting with the other world, people in the world, you don't want to let go of the peace. You want to be in that peaceful state only, even while you interact. You are kind of having that condition in the background while you still continue to do what you are supposed to do in the world. Now, I'm just giving an example of peace because this is something most of the people would have experienced, but it's the same for all other points also. That is what is supposed to happen. Now, look at the condition versus the non-condition. Now, you look at the table. Does the table or the chair have consciousness of its own?
No.
No. How do you say that something has a consciousness of its own? What is the criteria?
When you start feeling for it.
No, we start feeling for the table, we start feeling for the chair. See, that the chair does not assert itself saying that I am the chair, you have to supposed to do like this with me. Does the chair say that to you? Or does the table tell you, I am table, you are supposed to behave with me like this?
No.
None of the objects actually ever is going to tell you anything. Right? Why? Because if you say that the entire thing has consciousness, Lalaji writes in the Truth Eternal, that everything has consciousness. It is just that some beings are able to express the consciousness better than the other beings. So rock and stone, they also have consciousness, but in a very dormant form. He says that it's in a dormant state. Animals have consciousness which is a bit more expressed. Plants have consciousness which is a bit more expressed. Humans are the only one which is where the consciousness is kind of fully expressed to the extent possible. Now, what is the difference between a human who is actually materially oriented versus a person who is spiritually oriented? What is supposed to happen to the consciousness?
Refined,
One is refined. Second,
expand,
expand.
inclusive,
Inclusive. There is
Flexible also.
fuller expression.
Spectrum.
I think somebody is echoing.
More awareness.
There is a fuller expression of the consciousness. Now, when you say fuller expression of the consciousness, one of the things that is commonly felt is you can actually work out what is likely to happen. Daj has written about this also in the Heartfulness Way. He says, if you are becoming very sensitive in your consciousness and able to pick up the readings early from the consciousness, you will not waste time in giving time to a business venture that is probably not going to flourish. You can pick up the clues. You will also not wasting time in relationship that is not likely to flourish. In other words, he says, by actually doing the meditation properly, you actually save time. Much of the time in your life, in many activities. Now, that is an expression of the better expression of consciousness. That's an example of better expression of the consciousness. I'm just giving you some simple examples that you can actually relate to. Of course, a better expression of the consciousness is all the conditions that we go through at every point, at every level of consciousness. Every level of consciousness is embedded with a condition. And when we actually go to that condition, that level of consciousness, and the work in that consciousness unfolds, we experience those conditions. In other words, when we have to know, are we progressing spiritually? There are 2-3 criteria now. For a person who is very sensitive, what they are going to pick up is they are going to pick up the work on the conditions in the consciousness. Now that is the sure short way of knowing the condition. There is no other sure short way. That is the foolproof method. Provided we develop sensitivity to it. Who do we call as sensitive? A person who is able to talk about the feelings that they undergo during the course of the meditation are said to be sensitive. There are people who might take sittings for years together, but they're not able to elaborate anything. They'll just say, I felt nice at the end of the meditation. That's it. They are not able to elaborate anything. They are not sensitive. One who is sensitive would have two components. One, they would have had the ability to experience the condition at the consciousness. And secondly, they would have developed a vocabulary at the level of the mind to express the condition in words. These are the two things absolutely necessary. Now, what is it that is necessary for you to develop this? Awareness, alertness, and self-reflection. And the last one is reading through the books, not to by heart it, but to pick up the vocabulary from the book. That is why you have to read the book. You have to read the book to pick up the vocabulary. When you pick up because the vocabulary is very similar. When the spiritual journey occurs, at different points, all of us have got the same feelings. The map is the same for all of us because it's God-given map. It's not our map. It's God-given map. So the feelings will be the same. If we know the kind of feelings that we are going to come through during the course of our journey, that is where critically the reading of the book comes in, because you are going to pick up the vocabulary. Now, it is not necessary that you have to stick to only this vocabulary. Depending on your upbringing, depending on your ability to express the feelings in words, you apart from this vocabulary that is there in the spiritual anatomy or the towards infinity, you might also develop many other things. For example, recently when we went to Happy Arts for the session, one of the person who came with me was talking about smoothness as a condition. Now, smoothness is not something that we actually read in the book as a condition, but it is felt. Why not? So there will be many things that you feel as a condition which might not be described in the book. For example, evenness is a condition that you feel. How was the meditation session? It was very even, we say. Okay, that's the feeling that you get. But if you actually look through the book and try to search for evenness, you will actually find it very hard to work out where is this evenness. But you can feel it. So what I want to emphasize is that there are a lot more conditions which we actually experience as we go through our journey than what is enumerated in the book. No book can ever capture all the divine knowledge that descends into the heart, which is caught. So, hence, divine knowledge cannot be taught. No book can cancel. Even if I were to write, say you have one spiritual anatomy, suppose we have the second volume, third volume, fourth volume, even then we will not be able to capture all the feelings that an Abhyasi can pass through. Infinite possibilities are there, depending on different conditions. See, we are talking about every condition as being pure. Peace is pure, calmness is pure, love is pure. Now, what about different combinations? Just take a simple example, acceptance in the first point. Now, you can say joyful acceptance in the first point. Now, when the same acceptance comes to the second point, it now becomes peaceful acceptance. When the same acceptance now comes to the third point, it becomes loving acceptance. When you go to the fourth point, the same acceptance is now courageous acceptance. Fifth point, it's acceptance with clarity. Sixth point, acceptance with the selflessness or with freedom. Now, can you see? We are just combining two qualities. Now, just work out what are all the possibilities that you can have when you take even 3-4 conditions at every point, at every chakra. How many combinations and permutations you can have. And no wonder that after some period of time, you start thinking, we cannot express every condition. I cannot express every condition. Of course, that should come at a higher state. But at the lower state, we should try to express the condition to the extent possible. The more you are able to elaborate on the condition, the more you will actually develop sensitivity to catch what is happening to you. And in that way, you will be able to catch your own progress. Now, suppose somebody does not have that ability. For whatever reason, they have tried and for many years and it doesn't develop. Now, that is where, have you tried everything to develop the sensitivity is one question that we ask. Have you read the books? Have you developed the vocabulary? Have you actually tried to elaborate? And I gave you 5 things that you have to write after every session. Awareness, absorption, observation, feeling, and a materialistic example. If you use these 5, you will over a period of time develop definitely sensitivity. No doubt about it. Of course, you also need to be in a place where some of these things are discussed regularly. When it is discussed, suppose an Abhyasi says a particular experience, and when it is discussed to some extent, some aspects is shed light. Now you pick up certain things from there. So if you have few Abhyasis who come with you regularly for sittings, over a period of time, you actually grow together. Each one of you will develop sensitivity. Because not everybody, if you give one sitting to 5 people, all 5 people will experience differently. So what they are going to express is different. What is going to come out of the discussion is also going to be different. So the expression and the discussion post-expression will actually make you more and more sensitive to all possibilities of growth. That's the advantage. Now, of course, like last time we discussed, you did not ask anything. The setting is over, that's all, you can go home. You are not going to pick any of these nuances or any vocabulary, nothing of that. Okay, so it's a choice that you have to make. Now, some people, Daji himself has said many times that you need to write in the diary and forget it. And literally, when he says forget it, we definitely forget it. We don't even remember what exactly happened last time back. Right? And the nuances also we forget it. So, last point is, when you interact with the objects of the world or with people at the materialistic level, when I say materialistic level with people, see, when we interact with people, they also have consciousness. We have consciousness, they have consciousness. However, we do not relate to people at the consciousness level. Now, just ask yourself a question. Do you have a group of people that you actually can interact with on a regular basis where you discuss about consciousness and spirituality matters? On a regular basis, day-to-day basis. Very few people have developed that kind of a group. You hardly have anybody that you can speak to about the experiences in the consciousness or the conditions or thereof. most of our interaction with other conscious being, which is he is the human being. Most of our interaction is with respect to the body or the mind or the samskaras. All of three are material in nature. Okay, the difference is the condition that we experience in consciousness has a life of its own. The samskaras that we get because of our interaction with the objects do not have a life of its own. We impart life to it. So, for a person who regularly develops an ability to dwell on the condition or settle on the condition, what is going to happen to their interaction with other people in terms of materiality? Automatically, it is going to go down. If at all they are going to interact with other people, they are going to interact in the context of a condition that they have developed. Oh, I'm feeling very, very peaceful. Do you also feel peaceful at any time? Interacting at that level in the context of the consciousness and the condition in the consciousness is way different than interacting at the level of did you have your food? Did you sleep well tonight? How is the office work going on? What is going on in the country? What is happening in politics? What is happening in cricket match? What is happening in this serial or that movie? No, where is spirituality in all these things? There's nothing. So when our heart, so what is supposed to happen? Even in the ashram, you go back to ashram. Satsang is over, everyone has the breakfast, and generally you look at what people are discussing during the breakfast. What do you think people are discussing? Most of the time, do you see people discussing about any condition, about any spirituality? None of it. Most of us are discussing about the food that we are eating, or something that happened last night, or about something that happened few days back in politics, or in current affairs, or in a cricket match, or a serial. Something out of interest, common interest. Now, what happened to the condition? No wonder Abhyasis complain that we are not actually progressing. We don't know what is happening. So the second way of knowing the progress is when the mind gets influenced by the condition and it starts metamorphosizing its habits. That's the second way. And the third way of knowing the condition is the mind not only metamorphosizes its habits, it also now starts showing changes in the way that it behaves with other people and other things in the world. That's the third level where you can see the change. Of course, there is a fourth level which is more subtle than just grasping the condition. That's something that we'll discuss once you become a perceptor. How can you actually look at your own condition, or how can you actually read the condition of the Abhyasi? So suppose an Abhyasi, I'll just give you a very simple small description of what normally an Abhyasi gives the description after the sitting is over. How was the sitting is the question. Brother, we closed the eyes, and then as we proceeded through the meditation, my body became numb. I started feeling a bit restless, so I started moving my limbs. After some period of time, my restlessness was so much. I'm just telling from today only. I felt like opening the eyes because I could not tolerate myself. So I opened the eyes. Then I realized that I was getting lot of thoughts. After some period of time, maybe 15 minutes, the thoughts started coming down. After the thoughts started coming down, I started feeling some kind of a peace. It was very clearly felt in the last few minutes before you said that's all, I felt a bit peaceful compared to the time that I started the meditation with. While I was feeling restless, I also felt very irritated. Now look at, or I felt anger or anxiety. Now look at this description. The first thing, the description that is being given is in terms of what is happening at the level of the body. Is that a condition? No. Is that what you're looking for? No. Second thing, I felt restlessness, I felt anxious. It's some kind of a thing which is being felt at the level of the mind. Not restless towards the goal. It is just restlessness. Not restlessness towards the goal. Confused between that. Okay. Now that is something again that's happening at the level of the mind and at the level of the emotions. I felt anger or I felt anxiety, I felt sad, something. Thirdly, I felt a lot of thoughts which gradually settled down. Where is that? That is also not a condition. That's again something happening at the level of the mind. In this entire description, the one thing that we should bring the attention of the Abhyasis to focus is on the last bit that they said when they talked about the feeling. Now, it is our duty as an preceptor to develop that sensitivity towards the Abhyasi, for the Abhyasi, towards the feeling. Okay, if the Abhyasis gives this description, and except once or twice for the sake of their learning, we might actually talk about some of the other things that they said. But what should we do ideally is that we should bring the attention of the mind on to the last part. This is what we are looking for, the condition. This is the condition. Now you can ask them, where are you feeling the peace? Are you feeling at the level of the mind or the heart? Definitely, a person who is sensitive will say, I'm feeling at the level of the heart. Now, you have now aroused that awareness in the Abhyasi about the condition. Now, you have not given it as a theory. You have given it as a practical experience. Now, if an Abhyasi comes, most of the Abhyasis who come to us are in the Pinda Pradesh. They all start in point 1. If you do not work with them while elaborating all these things and making them learn all these things, and you expect them to develop sensitivity towards the condition, work out what is a condition, and then work with the condition and they grow spiritually, it is going to take a lot of time. When we can actually get the Abhyasi to become alert and aware about what is a condition, how to actually grasp the condition and actually work with them, that is how we are actually going to help the Abhyasi progress faster in their spiritual journey. Okay. Today, there were 3 people. In the morning also I asked them, how many people you have taken sittings from different preceptors? How many people have actually described or discussed with you what is a condition? First line. Without knowing what is a condition, there is no question of any spiritual journey. Forget about it. And how to develop the condition? Alertness, awareness, and self-reflection. These are the 3 critical tools that you need to have, and not only during the session of meditation, but all times outside. So what you do during the meditation is exactly what you're supposed to do outside the session of meditation also, while you pay part of the attention to the worldly activities. Not 100%. Part of the attention. Now you might say, then I'm not actually paying full attention. When you do an activity while keeping an attention on the heart, but you are also fully involved with the heart, your full attention is there, but part of the attention is going to the heart. When we say wholesome attention, that includes the body, the mind, and the heart. That's how you do the work. But then part of the attention of the mind is going towards the heart, and the rest of the attention is going towards the activity that you are doing. I hope it's clear how actually the journey should occur over a period of time. And what is it that we are supposed to discuss with every Abhyasi who comes to us in the context of the condition. So I will stop here. The condition that we get in consciousness has life in it by itself. So how do we know that we are becoming more spiritual? If we start paying more attention to the condition that we get in meditation at different levels of consciousness, because it has more life, and decrease our attention that we pay to the samskaras, that's a good indication that you are now aligning towards the spiritual journey. If after the condition has been given to you in the heart, your attention is still flowing majorly towards the samskaras only, which doesn't have a life of its own. We impart life to the samskaras. Like we impart life to the idol that we bring for puja. We impart life to it. That is what is called as prana pratistapana. You impart life to the idol that you get. That is prana pratistapana. Now you might wonder, Daji also writes in Tirthankaras, holy Tirthankaras, that you can actually go and hug the trees and you will get benefit of it. Now, just now we are talking about our consciousness is a fuller expression compared to the trees. Then why should we go and hug the trees? Is the next question. The simple reason is the trees do not have individuality. They do not have any ego. The tree will not say, I don't like you, don't come under my shade. The trees will interact with everyone uniformly without any individuality, without any samskaras. Where there is no individuality, there is no samskaras. In other words, the tree retains the purity of the consciousness as it is. even though it might grow. We do not retain that consciousness because we actually become more and more impure as we grow, because we go on putting samskaras because of the individuality. So when we hug the tree, to what extent it's going to be helpful? Till we reach a pure state of consciousness. For a person who has reached a pure state of consciousness, there is no need for them to go and hug the tree or worship any idol. Because the consciousness itself is of such nature, all those external things becomes totally invalid now. Does it make sense? So each one is relevant to a certain extent. Okay. And last point is, today morning we were discussing about the role of Kundali or Jataka. See, our ancestors wanted to have certain way of knowing that the two people who are getting into marriage can actually gel together, or some way of knowing it. Now, obviously, they did not have any way of relating at the level of consciousness. Right? For a person who is a spiritual abhyasi, who is well versed with the condition of the heart, they might be able to grasp early whether this is going to work or not. But what about common people who have no clue about consciousness? What is going to happen is that, like our sages brought about idol worship as a way of somebody who is in a gross state to be able to relate to divinity, at least at that level, they brought about this aspect of Kundali, where the common people can actually work out from a different way. How can these two people who come together be matched? And we match it at the Ganakuta. You see how much Ganas they actually are able to align with one another. Now, what is exactly it saying? It is using a different methodology. What is the methodology? It is taking the horoscope in the sense that which star constellation that the person was actually born into, what was the alignment of the different planets at the time of birth, and then what happens to the journey in the course of the growth of this particular person through different dashas. Dasha is nothing but an influence of a major planet on the life of a person for a certain significant period of time, for a certain period of time. That is a dasha. So the 9 planets has a different dashas on the soul as it progresses. Now, as long as you are in the Pinda Pradesh, you are under the influence of these planets. So Kundali is valid. The moment you cross into the Brahmanda and go beyond, Kundali is not valid. Because you have now gone beyond the realms of where the grahas can actually influence your life. That is what happens. So we need to understand many of these aspects from this particular context. Each one is relevant at different parts of our journey. Once we cross that particular part, it might become irrelevant. So I'll stop here. Take a pause for 1 or 2 minutes. Reflect on all the things that we have discussed now. And then you will have a good idea regarding how do you need to handle when the abhyasis were to come to you. And now you should also have a good idea what is it that you are going to discuss with your preceptor when you go over the sitting next time. You need to gradually bring the attention on the condition. And when we go for sitting, we give feedback to the preceptor in 2 different contexts. First context is what has happened since the last sitting till that time, over the course of the last 1 week. That's the first feedback. Second feedback is what happened during the course of that particular sitting. Now, this aspect of what happened during the course of the week, from one sitting to the next sitting, that you can say either before the start of the sitting or you can say after the sitting is over. But you need to cultivate a habit of talking about your condition during the course of the week. Okay. Now, earlier we were speaking about one last point, which is about the importance of path of knowledge. Okay. In the Pinda Pradesh, especially. If you want to hasten your journey in the Pinda Pradesh, the best thing to use is the Vijnana Kosha or your intellect and develop knowledge. And knowledge is of 2 aspects. One is the books that you read, the discussions that you have with different people in terms of grasping the nuances of your journey. Second one is in terms of sensitivity towards the condition. If you can combine these two and utilize your intellect to work out what is happening over a period of time, that will be the best recipe or the best way of progressing fastest during the Pinda Pradesh journey. Now, if you were to keep your intellect locked, because you've been told not to discuss about anything, that will slow down your journey significantly. That's the best instrument that you have got, the subtlest instrument that you have got, that the nature has bestowed to you, but you are not using it because you have kept it under lock and key. Okay, so again, importance of the knowledge aspect as we progress through the early part of the journey. That's where many of these discussions that we are holding after each session actually comes in very, very handy to look at how to optimize our own instruments that we have got in terms of our journey. Every instrument that is given is useful for our journey. Why not optimize it for different stages of our journey? In that way, we can actually evolve the fastest. And that's how Babuji and Daji wants us to evolve. Okay, I'll stop here. Reflect, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take. Veena sister, you have raised your hand and you have not got tired for the last 45 minutes, and that's good to see.
Yes, brother. But I don't know whether you feel when I ask you have already answered, but I will go with it. I have two questions. One is, see, when we take sitting, brother, feeling of oneness, or you are going more towards inside your heart, so that is felt. But many a times when we sit for meditation, Sunday meditation, expanding consciousness, like you go from inside out, is felt. So is there, and how to, always my question will be how to interpret. That's how my mind will be.
Expansion by itself will not give you a clue regarding where the work is occurring. Expansion will just say that the nature of the movement is expansion. See, you can have movements from one point to another point, which is like a horizontal line or a vertical line. That's like a movement. Then you can have an all-round expansion. That's what you feel during the satsang.
Yes.
The difference between satsang and individual sitting is in individual sitting, very little transmission is used. And in a satsang, a lot more dose of transmission is given. When we go to a satsang with our heart prepared, we get the benefit of that higher dose of transmission. So when we get into the satsang, we are likely to experience a higher state. Expansion is always felt mostly in the 6th point and beyond. That's where distinctly the expansion is felt from inside out. Okay, we can feel some expansion in the Pinda Pradesh also, but that's very limited. It's in a limited way we feel. But in the Pinda, Brahmanda and above, the expansion is very vivid. Okay, so that's one part of the answer. Second part of the answer is that since you get more transmission, you are likely to touch higher points during the satsang than when you do during the individual sitting. During the individual sitting, since majority of the time is felt or is used for cleaning, and only small dose of transmission is used, your way of relating to higher points is actually less. However, it is the individual sitting that actually prepares your heart for the experience of the higher points during the satsang.
Satsang, yes.
So without the individual sitting, you will not experience that higher states in the satsang. So they both go together. So if people are only attending individual sitting and not attending satsang, they are at loss. If people only attend satsang and they are not taking individual sitting, then also they are at loss. So that's why all components of our practice is essential.
Yes, brother.
And the second thing is, when you do the meditation at home,
yes,
our ability to attract the transmission is very limited. Our ability to attract the transmission is limited when we start with, and as we grow in meditation, as we align to the taste of the meditation, our ability to absorb or attract the transmission becomes more and more stronger. When it becomes very strong, you will not feel much difference when you sit and meditate, when you go and take a sitting. Of course, different nature of work might occur there in the city, but the difference gradually comes down over a period of time. Not only that, wherever you sit, you are able to actually go into a very good depth of meditation. That's an indication when we are able to go to a certain depth of meditation with ease. It just indicates indirectly that our ability to attract the transmission to that extent has become better. Okay.
Yeah. So my second question was, see, sometimes when we take individual sitting or soon after meditation, you feel like I don't know whether it's silly or cleaning the house or doing some household work, especially the cleaning. That is with me, I'm asking. So is there any, like, you always want to make things tidy, tidy, tidy. Is there any significance for that? Any manifestation of physical work?
It just indicates one thing. Your heart has now become sensitive to cleaning. And the heart does not like what is there in the inside system. The external cleaning that you're doing is a reflection of the heart wanting to clean itself of all the dirt inside. You have now become sensitive. So this projection of what we feel inside into external activity is a very common thing that we observe. And that can happen for many things. Suppose when we have silence inside the heart, then you will come and say, you don't want anybody to speak. You want the whole world to be silent. Because that is the condition that is now being felt in the heart, and you want to reflect that condition outside. If anybody want to come and say to you, you say, don't speak. Keep quiet. This is something that we experience many times when we become sensitive to certain things. It actually manifests in different ways in the external world for us. So you need to keep an eye on. Anyway, that's a good thing that you're actually noticing. Then noticing that there is certain change in your behavior after the sitting is over. For me, it just indicates that the heart is now sensitive for cleaning. You should take that a bit more seriously than what you have taken. That's all it is. Okay, but not only the cleaning, there could be many other things that can be felt.
Manifestations, yes.
Manifestation. For example, if you're feeling love, you want to express your love to everything that is outside. When the love is there, it gets reflected in our interactions with other people. Not only other people, with every living being. When you watch a plant, you will feel like lovingly hugging it. When you look at an animal, you want to kind of go close to it and then play with it. When you look at a human being, you want to interact with them very, very closely with a loving manner. So the condition that we feel gets reflected outside. We become sensitive to that particular condition. In a way, it's good, in a sense that you are now developing sensitivity to it. But since it is about cleaning, it also gives you a clue that you also need to take the cleaning more seriously than what you've been doing till now. That's
Yes, brother. Thank you.
Anybody else? Everyone has been made quiet. Silence. Vidya sister.
Whether
Raghu brother,
1 minute, Karthik, 1 minute. People have
okay.
raised hand. Let them finish and we'll come back.
Brother, this was such an eye opener, brother. Really don't know what to think, feel. Means what you have explained, at least some part of it relating to our life, will become more clear. Like how you told condition, you start showing love to everything, everybody, even inanimate things has become very clear. And to the patients, you don't feel like scolding them also, even if they've given up tablets. Many times it so happens. And please, brother, can you put this whole thing in YouTube so that we
We'll put
can,
it. No problem.
please,
We'll
brother.
put it in YouTube. Because see, this is very fundamental to the perceptor work. Whatever we discuss today is very
Yes.
fundamental to the perceptor work. And unfortunately, it has not been discussed in the way that we have been able to discuss today.
Yes, yes.
And if we can actually focus on the condition from day one, actually gradually in the first few months, teach the Abhyasi about the importance of what is a condition, how to work with the condition and grow spiritually, until unless they actually capture this part, they will waste years together. And there are many people who talk about the condition unknowingly. But if they are actually made aware of it, it becomes so much easier for them to actually recognize their own journey. And this in the context of what sister said, not knowing is almost equal to not having it.
Yes, yes, brother. And many times it feels that last few years, if somebody had told us this, maybe our journey would have been faster.
Everything has its time.
Yes,
See, even the SNP 2 candidates did not have all this whatever space that we have got now. It's only the U people have got this space. SNP 3 2 had a different kind of an approach. We were focused on the modules. But this time we have actually focused on the textbook for the exams and also for the sake of learning. So it's a big learning for us also. And if you were to ask the same question to me, why did not you tell all these things beforehand? To be honest with you, I got this clarity over the last 3 days. Whatever I now shared with you, whatever is my learning, I've shared with you. That's all. So that is also an indication that we continue to evolve. All of us, we might feel that this is what we know now, but it's quite possible that as we go further, we might further continue to elaborate in such a way, it becomes even more clear than what we've got now. Anyway, again, it's a thing that we need to keep in mind that we are all evolving together. And the thing that we want to thank myself and probably even our Venkatadri brother will thank you is for us, for you to be our sounding board.
Yeah, true.
Giving it a feedback. See, I might explain everything, but you might actually ask some question which might stump me. Quite possible. Right? That being the case, we are all kind of sounding board with one another. You are actually, I am the sign, we are the sounding board for you people, you are the sounding board for us. We all evolve together, and that's a very, very important part of the journey. And to be honest, we need to have a lot of gratitude to people because the depth to which that you have gone, I have probably not seen even many preceptors going to that depth. Everyone has read certain level at certain depth, a certain superficial level, but nobody has actually pondered. Like for example, the questions that you people asked in the third not today, nobody has even pondered about it at all. So it's I think hats off to you people that you are able to go to that depth and ask those questions, and that will actually help us to reflect even more, and then come back with more clarity when we actually speak next time around. So it's a mutual thing. So good. Manikandan.
I was explaining, brother. So you said an important point about that living at the conscious level and containing interacting. So that is how do we develop that? Because I know we every satsang after that we come back to our mundane life and then start interacting, and we don't have a group except that meet with the some of them for a short duration due after satsang. So how to cultivate that habit and develop this one? Could you explain this?
Two things you can do. First thing is, after the meditation session is over, during the course of the day, whether it's a satsang or sitting, during the course of the day, consciously bring your attention of the mind on the heart again, at least few times. Secondly, consciously practice trying to interact with the people or the things that you do with the condition being held in the background. This is a conscious effort. When you do these two things, and the third thing that you can do is that always have this suggestion that you are going to the subtlest of the subtlest condition. What is godly state? Godly state is subtlest of the subtle. That is the godly state, where even the distinction between experience, the existence and non-existence vanishes. When you keep these three things, automatically over a period of time, you'll start seeing that your ability to interact from the level of the condition that you got in the meditation now starts gradually becoming easier and easier. Initially, you might need to do it very consciously, but over a period of time, it becomes your nature. So you will not do anything that's going to disturb the condition inside, because you would value the condition more than any interaction in this world. That's why when Daji comes to many times when the people come for a sitting, he says, don't say anything, just be. Because Daji is always in that condition. He doesn't want to talk at all. He doesn't want to do anything that's going to disturb the condition. Other point I learned over the last 1 week when we stayed in Kanha is some of the Abhyasis and preceptors were actually bringing mentally ill patients to Kanha. Please do not do that mistake. Kanha is a place where there is super refined vibrations. When you bring a mentally ill patient to Kanha, they are all at a grosser level of vibrations. That is going to change the whole atmosphere of Kanha. And that's not good. If at all you want to get a mentally ill patient treated, get it treated outside the ashram, not inside the ashram. And unfortunately, when I was there for few days, people were demanding that I need to give consultation to some of the psychiatric patients that they had brought in Kanha. And unfortunately, I had to refuse. I said, this is not the place for psychiatric consultation. And I have not come here for psychiatric consultation. I have come here to be in a super refined state of consciousness, not to go back to the grosser level of consciousness. If you require that help in terms of professional help for managing the psychiatric condition, it should be in a different realm. Now, some people might like the answer, some people might not like the answer, but I just gave the answer which is the most honest possible. In our own house, we do not go and eat our food in the restroom or the toilet. We do not take bath in the God's place in the house. If you have place where you have actually kept the idols for worship, you do not go and take bath there. When we actually distribute the space within our own house for different activities, why can't we be sensitive about this in Kanha or any other ashram for that matter? So, demanding a consultation either for a physical condition or a mental condition in the ashram premises might not be the best thing. Of course, if we were running a kind of a medical camp in the ashram premises, just kind of a health screening or some kind of a modification of lifestyle, that is a different thing. Even there, we would have combined spirituality into the routine. So we would look at the health in the context of spirituality, not otherwise. So please do not make that particular mistake. And last thing is, in terms of all the discussions that we are having, we are actually having, I just launched my website today in the evening. And that website has a lot of special things in the sense that we have spiritual counseling, which is utilization of the spiritual principles for the benefit of the mind. Second thing is, it has a special focus on people who are in meditation and who are having difficulties. Not just in the spiritual journey, but in actually the mental health related issues. And you might be surprised, over the last 6 months to 1 year, I've actually seen more abhyasis and preceptors as my patients than non-abhyasis. And when I met the doctor at Khanna Medical Center, he said, I'm struggling to get a psychiatrist to come and see the patients in Khanna. There are so many of them. And he is not a psychiatrist. He wants me to go on there and see the patients in Khanna. Then you might wonder, they're all in that spiritual environment. How is that they're developing mind-related issues? You can still develop mind-related issue, even though you might be progressing spiritually. Because it takes time for the condition of the heart to have an impact on change in the habits of the mind. That's the reason why you see this. And when the heart becomes sensitive, you become more sensitive to the habits of the mind. Like just now, the sister give an example. You become sensitive to the habits of the mind. And when you become sensitive to the habits of the mind, that could be a health related condition of the mind, nothing to do with the spirituality. So there's a whole scope of this. So there are quite a few things that I've actually put in the website. So if you people are free, just go through that and then we can utilize it in all these best way possible, because we want to combine, as I said last time around, consciousness based medicine as the way forward rather than medication based medicine. That's what we need to do. And I think that's something that we need to gradually develop over the next, say, 10 to 20 years. Okay. When I mentioned about this to Khanna doctor, he was very surprised. Huh? You've given me a coin word that I can actually focus on. Consciousness-based medicine. He did not have that vocabulary in his diary. Nice thing. We can actually work together and develop this. So, interesting. So, a lot of new things. That's the beauty of spirituality. All new potentialities will open up. When you combine it with spirituality, it opens up. I was telling the people who are coding, why don't you code with vibrations and feeling associated in the code? Why do code in a very raw, dead manner, so to say? No feeling, no vibration. If you can code as an IT person with that feeling and with that vibration, it is likely to have a different impact than just like logically coding it. So there are new fields that is likely to come up in due course. Okay. Now, Karthik.
So do you please share the site address, brother? That will help us.
Your
You-
website.
the-
I'll just put it in the candidates group.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes. Good evening, Raghu brother. Anna, ನಂದೇನ್ question ಇತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ, so even when you go to higher stages, what can be the reason that from higher stages you come back to lower stages?
You will not finish the work at the lower stages.
So that
Very simple example.
okay.
With master's power and transmission, the sittings and the works that you do, you go to the sixth point. Now at the sixth point, you are eligible for liberation. But if you do not give up the desires that is there in the first point, and you are in the sixth point, but you still have desire for worldly property, to making more money, to having more houses, various materialistic desires. What should have happened? The desire should have actually moderated. Of course, some degree of moderation came that enabled you to move to the higher points. But when you come to the sixth point, you should actually develop that state of selflessness. And as long as you have selfish desires, it is going against the condition of the sixth point. So you are eligible for liberation, but you don't get liberation. You come back to life again. Because the desires in the first point is still pulling you downwards. So when that is the case, you might be pushed to the sixth point by the master's power, by transmission, but you cannot sustain there. You will come back. So pushing or getting pushed because of the master's power is one thing, and being able to sustain yourself there is another thing altogether. So for example, if somebody gives you money and you land up in US for a particular course, to be able to go there with the help of the money that people have given you is one thing, but to be able to sustain there while you stay there and do the studies or the work is a different issue altogether. And when this support is not there, then you have to actually have a way of supporting yourself in the place that you are. And that supporting yourself will directly relate it to sensitivity. To what extent you are sensitive, that is how you actually relate, develop an ability to sustain yourself there. And that's based on sensitivity.
So not just 6 point, Anna, means
It could be
9.
any point. I just gave you an
Could be
example.
any point,
It could
but
be any point.
if it is not refined and if you are not sensitive, then there is a 90%, 99% chance that you will come back again between to 1 to 4.
But the good thing is, I'll also tell you the good thing. The good thing is, now that the path has been set, if you correct those things, you will actually go back faster. You will not waste time.
Yes. Thank you.
So don't feel bad about it. It's all right.
ಇಲ್ಲ
So
ಇಲ್ಲ
learn
ಇಲ್ಲ
this is we all make the mistake and then we come down and then we go back up again once you correct the mistake.
ಎಸ್ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ವೆರಿ ಮಚ್ ಅಣ್ಣ.
Okay. Kishore?
Yeah, good evening, brother. So my question actually it has two subparts. So I will go with the smaller one first. So when you were saying like after developing more on the spirituality, like we can still develop the mental health or such certain type of conditions. So uh, this was not getting clarified to me. The more to the reason why was like so you were earlier mentioning about the condition of feeling peace, right? Where we feel in the mind or in the heart. So we feel it in the heart definitely because it is the organ of feeling, but at the same time mind is also, it is when we are peace at the heart, they also say mind is at the ease. It is maybe because it is in close proximity of the heart, so we kind of start copying or grabbing similar things from there. So when we are growing spiritually, we are on the higher conditions, we should be more in a situation to manage things. How it can happen, like, we are getting disturbed to such an extent, like it becomes abnormal type of thing.
Very simple. The answer is you have not got rid of all the samskaras. The samskaras are still there and working. And the samskaras can actually manifest as different illnesses. All illness are nothing but different samskaras coming to bhoga. So when some of the samskaras come to bhoga at the body level, you have a body illness. When the same set of samskaras or a different set of samskaras come to the at the mind level comes to bhoga, you have a mental related issue. That's all it is.
Okay, so it means we are always susceptible to like we.
Because the samskaras are still there.
Okay, so more
So
focus on the
you see,
cleaning.
what you are talking about is if you move from first point to say fifth point, then the possibility of mental illness should come down. In one perspective, yes, correct. But from the other perspective, you should never forget. Till we actually go to the very high points, up to the 12th point, you still have samskaras. And the effect of the samskaras is to bring about bhoga. And when the samskaras bring about bhoga, that's why we see even many preceptors who are like 50 years, 60 years into the system and being preceptors for 50 years, they can still develop cancer. Now you might wonder, how is that they are developing cancer? When the samskaras have already been cleaned out, everything, where is the question of cancer coming in? But we see that people develop cancer. People develop various illnesses. I've had one 75-year-old preceptor develop depression. I had another preceptor develop a severe anxiety disorder, which lasted for about 1.5 years. Senior preceptors, I'm talking about. I'm not talking about recent preceptors. And the challenge with recent preceptors is different, actually. See, very few people have actually had the ability to observe what happens to the mind of a person when they are made preceptors. What happens to the mind? Has ever wondered what is going to happen? And that in itself is a very different kind of a journey. So they are all, see, we are all actually now exploring new fields, new avenues. So anyway, go ahead. So that's the answer to the question.
Good, thank you.
You finished your question? I thought you had two parts.
Yeah, like the second part where I was correlating mind to the heart. So it was that.
So the samskaras can come to the bhoga and that can manifest as a mental illness. The difference is a person who is spiritually inclined suffers less intensely and they require treatment for a lesser duration at a lower dose. That's the benefit. They can still develop illness, but they will actually suffer for a smaller duration, lesser intensity, and thirdly, lesser duration or medication is required for them. That's the difference. Okay, so
Just a time.
from all angles, you will benefit spiritually. So please stick to meditation. Don't give up on the meditation. Stick to the spiritual journey. All levels will benefit. Brother, you were saying something.
Just a time check, brother. It's 11. So
No, I saw that.
hitting 11. So yes.
No problem.
I think you also must be getting tired. I think you should get a glass of water or something.
No, it's all right. No problem. I'm feeling fresh.
Karthik Karthik brother is sort of raised his hand. Not sure if you asked a question. He
Yeah,
asked a
Karthik
question
is-
already.
No,
I-
I'm sorry, brother. I didn't put it down. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
Anyway, so we would like to thank both of you and Venkatadri brother for his presentation and giving that space for all this discussion to kind of come through.
No, I'm learning also. For instance, I've been preparing for some time. So I think this is also a part of the learning for me. So it's really very useful.
So good
I'm
for us
benefiting.
to all come through in that spirit of learning. So we'll hope have another productive sessions on the Thursday when we go through the fourth point. Okay. And thank you once again from our end, and we will all catch up again on Thursday. Okay. Namaste to all and
Thank you.
good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.